Hello everybody, it's Wednesday morning. Hope you have a fantastic day. We're dealing with a series in metaphors. The wonder of the English language is very cool sometimes, where they use certain words for the majority of the time, but those same words and phrases, sometimes they use it to create a new angle or to teach us a new truth. And we're looking at some of those metaphors as we find them in the Bible. We're talking about the metaphor of the God being the shepherd and us being the sheep, and how the sheep should be relaxed in the knowledge of knowing who God is. Be still and know, stuff you know, that He is God. And we've been talking about who God is and how we should relate to Him. I want to suggest to you today that the sheep should be relaxed in the purpose that God has for them. I find that amazingly inspiring. That God, the God of this universe, man, billions and billions of people, and He has a purpose for me. He's put me together with that purpose in mind. He's created situations in my life to teach me how to fulfill His purpose. And sometimes we'll come kicking and screaming to say, God, why have you done that? Why have we done this? And yet God will smile with great love upon us and say, it's just equipping you to fulfill my purpose. I have a great purpose for you. And as we submit to God and the knowing that He has a purpose for us, that purpose can be fulfilled. You keep fighting with God, that purpose, trust me, is not going to be fulfilled. But as we cooperate with God and what God is doing and who God is, all of a sudden we begin to see the purpose of God being folded out into our lives. God has a purpose for us, just like the shepherd has a purpose for his sheep. I guess that's why sheep who are relaxed, which is what we're talking about, understand that Romans 8:28 is their key verse, that all things work out for the good of man and for the glory of God that come into your life. All things work out for that good, and they work together for that purpose. That God has a plan for you, He has a purpose for you, He has a picture, He has a vision of who you are and what He wants for you to do. Don't look around you and look at other people and say, man, I wish I could do that. You know, that goes in the face of God. He has an individual purpose for you. And when we submit to that purpose of God, no matter what it may be, it's not some kind of, oh well, passive resignation, que sera, let God do His thing. No, it's not at all. It's a positive relaxation that with a smile on our faces we can say, God is shaping me. I may not look that great right now, but God's not finished with me yet. He is purposing out His will for my particular life. And knowing that purpose, and even if you don't know how it's going to end, it's still a cool thing to know. Acts chapter 27, that's one of the most remarkable stories about the Apostle Paul. He's a prisoner, and he's on his way to Rome, and he's in a ship. He warned the people not to take the trip because he knew God had said there'd be a storm along the way. They didn't listen to him. So they stuck all the prisoners on the ship. They began to set sail, and Paul was right. There was a storm that hit them. And the people were perplexed for 14 days. That little boat was tossed up and down in the midst of the storm. But an angel came to Paul and said, Paul, don't worry. God has a purpose for you. And His purpose for you is that you will one day get to Rome. You will be there. So nothing can stand in the way of that purpose. So the people were completely perplexed. They were in a mess on the ship. They were going to throw the prisoners overboard. They lightened the ship. They were going to kill the prisoners, and they just didn't know what to do. And so Paul stood up and he said, hey guys, God has said relax. And they said, relax? Have you looked over the board here and seen the storm that is raging, these tidal waves, these tsunamis coming over us, and you tell us to relax? How can you say that? And Paul, probably with a bit of a cynical smile, says, because my God has told me that. My God has said that we're all going to be safe. All 300 or 276 of us prisoners are going to survive this ordeal. Just trust God and relax in the midst of the storm. Anyway, they did that. They cut loose the anchor. They drifted onto a sandbank. They were about to kill the prisoners. And Paul said, don't do it. Just relax. God will make sure of this. They all swam to shore. And a freak thing that not one person drowned. Everybody was accounted. When they got there, spluttering water coming out their noses, they stood upon the seashore, and the soldiers counted them, 276 all of them were accounted for. Probably late that night they made a fire, and Paul was putting together the fire, and a snake, a venomous snake, came out from the fire and bit Paul on the hand. And everybody looked and said, "Hey, we know about that snake. That's a venomous snake. We think he's going to die." Paul just shook the snake off. He knew God had a purpose. He knew that no matter what the world threw at him, if he was faithful to God and honored God, God would fulfill his purpose in his life. Well, you know the story. Paul got to Rome, and he must have looked back in days gone later, and those people who were prisoners with him must have said, "Man, I wish we'd just listened to Paul. We wouldn't have fretted nearly as much as we did." You see, God has a purpose for his sheep, and when the sheep cooperate with the shepherd, God's perfect purpose will always be fulfilled for your life. People, you've got to believe this. God does have a purpose for you. He's put you together in the most unique, beautiful way. And you finding that purpose one day at a time, passing the tests of acknowledging God's love, not getting angry when you go through the test, of submitting to the will of God. Ultimately, at the end of the day, and the curtain closes on your life, God will applaud you and say, "Man, you did a great job. You fulfilled my purpose for you." Isn't that what life is all about? Isn't that what death is all about? To be able to stand before God and say, "Lord, I think I did okay, hey? I fulfilled your purpose for my life." One of the beautiful passages of scripture comes from my mind is where it spoke of David, and it simply said this: "And David fulfilled his purpose for his generation, and he died." What a cool thing for God to say about anybody. Put that on your epitaph, on your funeral, on that tombstone thing that they put there. This man fulfilled his purpose for his generation, and he died. People, life is not complicated. That's what it's all about, just fulfilling God's purpose for your life. Be faithful to him, be committed to him, love him, serve him, and watch what happens. Have an awesome day, you people. Cheers.